The emperor personally sets her forest ablaze. Yet, amidst the smoking ruins, he proposes to the witch. "I love you so much that I want to destroy you." Staring at this face that overlaps with the lonely blonde boy from her memories, Ariel finally understands that this devastating invasion stems from an obsession spanning 15 years. What's going on? What on earth just happened? Ariel's mind spirals into chaos. The day had started peacefully, just like any other. Now she can only drag her wounded body forward, running desperately for her life. Everything around her lies unrecognizable. Is his magic simply too powerful? A concerned voice suddenly calls out, asking if she's all right. She looks up to see the mage who attacked her forest, his expression confident and arrogant. His superior bearing suggests he was born to rule over others. Ariel doesn't understand why someone like him would attack her forest. Even more confusing is his sudden marriage proposal. The emperor begins recounting an ancient tale about the Eastern Thorn Forest. In the story, a witch who slept for 1,000 years is discovered by a golden-haired prince. However, the prince is too young, so the witch takes on the responsibility of caring for him. But when the prince turns 15, the witch falls into another long slumber, and the prince never gives up searching for her. The prince becomes emperor, mastering powerful magic. He breaks through countless obstacles and finally reaches the castle where the witch sleeps. The joy of reuniting after 10 years drives him to madness. He burns down the forest and destroys the witch's home. Then, in this manner, he proposes to the witch. The story ends with them living happily together. Ariel feels a strange familiarity with this story. The emperor expresses his love with deep passion and obsession. He confesses that his love is so intense he wants to destroy her. Ariel tries to find balance in this extreme emotion. The emperor demands she make a clear choice between destruction and love. Ariel hastily chooses the path of love. The emperor declares with satisfaction that they've achieved their happy ending. Yet Ariel persistently questions the omitted details. The emperor seems slightly surprised by her persistence. He gently suggests they create their own journey together. Ariel begins tracing back to the root of the problem. She tries to untangle this complicated, emotional entanglement. The memories gradually sharpen. Everything began 15 years ago. Back then, she was sleeping peacefully deep in the forest. Through the haze, she saw a golden-haired figure slowly approaching. He appeared before her like a descending angel. His first words were surprisingly about being shocked she was still alive. The young prince was considering extreme methods to wake her. Ariel's heart filled with shock and confusion. She hastily explained the dangers of such actions. She tried to make this crazy child put down the knife in his hand. Now she finally understands that all this entanglement began at that very moment. When that blonde boy broke into her sleeping forest, the gears of fate had already started turning. In the eastern monster forest filled with thorns and treants, time flows incredibly slowly. Ariel Escade, Princess of Arendelle and Great Mage, has lived alone in this forest for many years. Bound by the forest's seal, she falls into sleep repeatedly, sometimes for a year, sometimes for a century. She only awakens when the forest's seal weakens, but her waking periods never last long. After waking from her long slumber, she needs to inspect the magic circles connecting to the outside world. She must also verify the portals sealed within the forest to prevent interdimensional intrusions. Afterward, she devotes her time to studying magic, attempting to make progress within her limited waking hours. Suddenly, a boy outside shouts, demanding she open the door. Ariel decides to ignore the voice, but the thunderous crash of her door being smashed makes it impossible to pretend she hasn't heard. The boy smiles at finally getting a response. Seeing her destroyed door, Ariel's furious roar echoes throughout the entire forest. This brings back memories of the first time she encountered this boy. The boy had been curiously examining her dwelling. Ariel warned him this wasn't a playroom. She demanded to know his identity and how he entered the forest. The boy responded with his mother's teaching, "Don't talk to strangers." Ariel retorted, asking if slashing a stranger's throat with a knife was acceptable then. The boy explained it was because she wouldn't wake up. He mentioned the fairy tale where a prince's kiss awakens the princess. Ariel demanded in shock what he had done. The boy naively believed the kiss didn't work because she was a witch. Ariel angrily denied any curse. The boy continued describing how he tried to wake her by covering her nose and mouth. Seeing Ariel's face turn pale, he stopped because his mother said not to kill people. He considered hitting her head with a stone but also abandoned that idea due to his mother's teachings. Finally, he decided to try waking her by stabbing her neck with a knife. Ariel helplessly informed him that stabbing the neck with a knife would also be fatal. She felt grateful she woke up in time, avoiding death in her sleep. The boy prepared to leave, and Ariel hoped he would go home quickly. However, the boy sensed the forest was filled with Shade's mana. Ariel was shocked he could identify magical power. She demanded to know how he knew her name and recognized her mana. The boy explained he had seen her magic circles in ancient magical ruins. He said he could feel even more of her mana in the forest. Ariel noticed the forest's mana was swirling around the boy. The boy suddenly announced he was leaving, promising to bring toys next time. He vanished instantly using a magic circle. Ariel found his magical talent unbelievable. She ordered the treant guards to block the intruder, but the treants showed no response. Soon after, the boy reappeared, delighted to see her awake. Ariel questioned how he had broken down the door earlier. The boy identified that the treant had damaged the door. Ariel understood the treant had failed in its duties. Then she noticed the treant's wrist was broken. The boy explained it broke when the treant caught him from falling. Ariel realized the treant had saved the boy. She discovered the forest was accepting this child. Powerful mana flowed within the boy. The forest's spirits stirred because of his magical power. Ariel complained that the treants were playing with the boy instead of performing their duties. The boy invited the treant to play in the clearing. Ariel was about to say this wasn't a playground when she noticed the wounds on the boy's body. These wounds looked like they came from beatings or cuts. The scars clearly hadn't formed in just a day or two. The boy wore expensive clothes and was well-nourished, clearly from a wealthy family. She deduced that only family members could harm a child from such a household. Ariel warned herself not to overthink it and to avoid getting involved in trouble. She compared the boy to someone else's stray blonde puppy. She decided to continue ignoring this child. Whether he was injured or beaten, she resolved not to care. Yet she still found herself involuntarily glancing at him. The boy immediately caught her gaze and pointed it out. Ariel had thought that with time, the boy would forget about the forest. She hoped everything would return to peace. But when she saw the boy appear covered in wounds, she could no longer turn a blind eye. In the depths of the strictly hierarchical palace, Cedric endured cold treatment because of his mother's humble origins. Palace servants often pretended not to see him, as if he were invisible. But what troubled him most was his half-brother Brian, only 5 months older. Ariel gently applies medicine to the wounds on his face, her heart full of pity. She cannot understand why anyone would hurt such a beautiful child so severely. Cedric calmly explains that today's beating happened because he caused his brother's horse to die. To get revenge on Brian, he had considered more extreme measures, but he remembered his mother's teaching, "You cannot kill your brother." So he chose to trip the horse with rope, hoping to give Brian minor injuries. Unexpectedly, the horse was put to death, and Brian's retaliation intensified. Ariel listens to his account, complex emotions rising within her. Cedric continues, saying he once wanted to blind Brian, but his mother's warning, "You cannot maim your brother," stopped him again. He plans to keep his promise to his mother and endure until adulthood. Ariel silently feels grateful that at least his mother's teachings restrain him. She curiously asks about his mother's current situation. She's dead. Cedric's answer is simple and heavy. His mother's last words became the code of conduct he still follows. Ariel develops deep respect for this mother she never met. She hands Cedric a piece of candy, attempting to shift the heavy topic. Cedric recalls the scene this morning when Brian came to him in rage. Brian cursed him loudly, accusing him of killing his beloved horse. Cedric responded calmly, his tone carrying subtle provocation. Brian flew into a rage and began beating him while the surrounding servants dared not intervene. He heard palace staff whispering, gossiping about his origins. They said he had seen the emperor only a handful of times, as if he barely existed. After venting his fury, Brian left triumphantly. The wounds on Cedric's body were shocking to behold, yet he only silently licked the blood from his lips, his expression unreadable. Ariel finally understands what kind of life he leads in the palace. She asks if anyone takes care of his daily needs. Cedric mentions that a servant prepares his basic necessities. Then, like a puppy expecting a reward, he asks if there's more candy. Ariel watches him select candy, her heart filled with compassion. She imagines this child's lonely figure in the magnificent palace. Perhaps this very loneliness drives him to come to the forest again and again. She carefully examines his wounds, surprised to find they heal faster than normal. Cedric teases whether she's truly a witch to create such effective medicine. Ariel hastily denies it and tells him her name. Cedric also gives his full name and allows her to use the nickname Seti. This intimate nickname brings them closer together. Ariel gently strokes his hair, inviting him to come to the forest anytime. Cedric notices her rare gentle smile and pauses slightly. From that day on, Seti comes to the forest even more frequently. Though he often bears new wounds, his mental state clearly improves. Ariel resolves to develop more effective medicine, hoping to help him. She tells herself she only needs to stay with him until he no longer needs this forest. Each time she tends to his wounds, she is especially careful and gentle. She hopes that at least here, he can feel the warmth of being cared for. However, one day, familiar footsteps bring an ominous premonition. Seti appears with blood covering his face, a dripping dagger in his hand. His lips curl in an unsettling smile, his eyes unnaturally bright. Ariel calls out his name in alarm, strong unease surging within her. The blood on him clearly isn't his own, which panics her even more. more. Cedric mentions Brian, and she assumes Brian splashed blood on him, angrily condemning such excessive behavior. But Cedric mentions Brian's horse again, recalling what happened earlier that day. Brian deliberately brought a new horse to show off and provoke him. Servants warned that the horse wasn't yet tamed and was extremely dangerous. Brian deliberately chose the largest, most dangerous horse to intimidate Cedric. He suddenly lashed the horse's rear viciously with a whip, and the horse reared up in fright, charging at Cedric in a critical moment. Just as the hooves were about to trample Cedric, blood gushed from the horse's neck. The horse collapsed dead, and Brian froze in shock at the scene. Cedric calmly said that was close, as if it were merely a small matter. Brian was so frightened he lost control of his bladder and fled the scene in panic. Ariel listens to the account, her feelings complicated. Cedric defends himself, saying the situation was dangerous and he acted in self-defense. Ariel comforts him, saying ensuring safety first in such circumstances is right. But Cedric's concern is to stand farther away next time to avoid getting splattered with blood. Ariel feels utterly helpless and decides to get him cleaned up first before slowly educating him. During the washing process, the bloodstains prove difficult to remove completely, frustrating her further. Fortunately, Daniel's clothes are available for him to change into, avoiding awkwardness. Ariel asks why no one questioned him walking around covered in blood at home. Cedric says the servant responsible for him is often absent, seemingly very busy. Ariel immediately understands this is deliberate neglect and worries about his situation. Cedric says it doesn't matter and quotes his mother's teachings from when she was alive. His mother told him that after she left he would be alone. If anyone approached him, they certainly had ulterior motives and he must remain vigilant. Ariel finally understands his mother's painstaking intentions. Before her death, this mother did everything she could to teach her child how to survive. Thinking about leaving her young child to face the world alone, she must have been filled with sorrow. Ariel's heart aches for this mother's worries. Cedric suddenly compliments Ariel, calling her beautiful. Ariel feels both surprised and pleased, but Cedric clarifies he doesn't mean her appearance, but the glowing colors around her. He describes in detail the distribution of colors he sees: red, yellow, and green light points. Ariel realizes with shock that he can see the colors of flowing mana. This is a talent only great mages possess, and she finds it unbelievable. She hurriedly drags him to experiment, not even bothering to grab bread. Ariel shows him magic circle patterns, teaching him to connect the color points he sees. She explains that if he can truly see mana, learning magic will be twice as effective. Cedric follows her guidance, connecting the red and green light points. Shockingly, merely connecting 2 points produces a magic circle. A massive fire magic circle forms instantly with astounding power. Cedric is thrilled at successfully casting magic. Ariel falls into deep shock. Summoning an intermediate fire magic circle with just 2 mana points is unprecedented talent. At this moment, a treant urgently taps Ariel's shoulder. She turns to find the treant engulfed in roaring flames. Ariel urgently tells Cedric to cast water magic to extinguish the fire. Cedric easily draws the water magic circle, instantly dousing the flames. He excitedly says he just drew the pattern he saw and the magic circle appeared automatically. Ariel is deeply shocked. This child's talent far exceeds her imagination. Meeting such a genius in this sealed forest makes her feel this is destiny's arrangement. A strong desire rises within her to cultivate this child into an exceptional mage. Ariel holds the soaked Seti in her arms, her heart engaged in fierce internal struggle. On one hand, she wants to take him as her apprentice. On the other, she worries about his character. She tries to convince herself that magic doesn't require character, only the ability to cast it. She also worries that the forest's slow passage of time will affect his normal development. But thinking that Seti has blonde hair rather than black hair, she figures it should be fine. Ultimately, desire conquers reason, and she decides to take him as her student. Cedric notices she's been muttering to herself and asks curiously, so Ariel enthusiastically invites him to learn magic. Even tempting him with you can torment Brian to study magic. Cedric is infected by her enthusiasm and agrees to try learning. Ariel immediately goes to the underground library to select appropriate magic books for him. Cedric watches her excitement and suddenly feels the warmth of being cared for. Ariel finds the magic books, but realizes she overlooked one problem. She discovers with surprise that Cedric cannot read the text in the books. Thinking this is his family's conspiracy, she becomes more determined to teach him properly. She searches for books suitable for basic literacy, but finds a children's picture book among the magic tomes. She complains about why Daniel would collect picture books, but Cedric, who had secretly followed her, overhears and becomes curious. She explains somberly that Daniel passed away long ago and doesn't wish to discuss it further. Cedric is immediately awed by the underground library's extensive collection. Ariel resolves to teach him systematically, starting with literacy. The learning continues from summer through late autumn, until snowflakes begin falling outside the window. Cedric has learned many ancient characters, progressing rapidly, but after class, he suggests he could learn magic without literacy. This immediately triggers Ariel's fierce rebuttal. She nags endlessly, showing her fanatical side about magic. book. Cedric tries to take the opportunity to leave, but Ariel calls him back. She brings out a book containing simple magic circles for him to take home and study. Cedric receives the book with delight, his eyes shining with excitement. He then clutches the book tightly to his chest, treasuring it like a precious gift. Ariel watches him cherish it, warmth rising in her own heart. That night, Cedric studies the magic book throughout the night. He's excited to be able to learn such rich magical knowledge. Meanwhile, the ancient Arundel text in the book makes him even more curious about Ariel's origins. This seemingly ordinary woman harbors countless mysteries. With a desire to explore, he holds the book preciously in his arms and falls into deep sleep. Late at night, a dark figure sneaks into the room and steals his treasured possession. Upon waking in the morning and discovering the book missing, panic and fury surge through Cedric. He rushes out to find the servant, only to witness the scene he least wanted to see. The servant is presenting the book to Brian, whose face bears a contemptuous sneer. Brian mocks that the book's origin is unclear, suspecting it was stolen. Cedric stares at them coldly, murderous intent showing in his eyes. Brian retreats in fear and flees in disarray. The servant, seeing things going badly, also tries to slip away but is stopped by Cedric's shout. A blonde man arrives at the commotion, asking what happened. Cedric coldly accuses the servant of stealing royal property. The man suggests punishing the servant with confinement or reduced wages, but Cedric insists on following ancient imperial law, demanding both hands be cut off. He stares down the man, demanding immediate execution of the punishment, and the atmosphere grows tense. In fear, the servant confesses Brian's instigation, trying to absolve himself. Before he finishes speaking, a blade flashes, blood sprays, and the servant screams in agony. The man carries out the punishment under the charge of slandering the royal family. Then he turns and feigns concern for Cedric. Cedric remains expressionless, as if the bloody scene has nothing to do with him. The onlooking servants whisper in horror, all finding him terrifyingly abnormal. He ignores all their gazes, focused only on how to retrieve that magic book. He has grown accustomed to such scenes, having been viewed as different his entire life. Memory returns to when his mother was still alive. On a sunny afternoon, in the park, a small white cat nuzzled against him affectionately, tickling him. His mother gently explained this was how cats express affection. Not fully understanding, he imitated the cat's movements, clumsily nuzzling his mother. His mother laughed and patiently taught him how to gently pet the cat. However, he confusedly compared the cat to soft flowers. A trace of worry flashed in his mother's eyes, knowing the path of teaching him would be long. But this warmth was soon shattered by cruel reality. On their way home, they discovered the cat's mangled corpse. The beautiful memory and bloody ending were deeply branded in his heart. His mother looked at the cat's corpse, tears silently falling, speculating it might have been kicked by a horse. Seeing this, Cedric reached out to stroke the cat's head. His mother gently stopped his hand, softly shaking her head. She bent down and patiently explained that he should feel sad at this moment, suggesting they bury the cat. Together, they dug a small hole in the garden corner and carefully placed the cat inside. His mother handed Cedric a bunch of freshly picked daisies, indicating he should offer them to the cat. Though Cedric didn't yet understand the meaning of sadness, he felt this was appropriate. He said softly, "The cat was lovely, and so are the flowers. It should like them." His mother nodded with relief, encouraging him to continue learning these emotional expressions. For this unique child, his mother poured in all her dedication. She taught him the world's rules repeatedly. Don't kill anyone, don't harm anyone, hide your abilities. Cedric obediently agreed, but noticed his mother's complexion growing increasingly pale. At her deathbed, his mother used her last strength to say "I love you," then closed her eyes forever. Her final wish was that he would meet someone he could cherish. She hoped someone would appear who could make his indifferent heart stir. At his mother's burial, Cedric offered flowers at the grave, his face showing no expression. His world had always been gray. And after his mother's departure, it lost its last bit of color. Do people to cherish truly exist? He often pondered his mother's final words. Day after day, his world became increasingly monotonous and dull, until one day, he discovered an ancient magic circle in a corner of the palace courtyard. On this abandoned magic circle floated colorful points of mana. In his gray world, these points of light appeared extraordinarily brilliant. He recognized this as the mana of great mage Askede, having felt a similar aura on antiques. When he approached, the mana within him was involuntarily absorbed by the circle. The next moment, he found himself transported to an unfamiliar forest. In the forest's center stood a small house, and he curiously pushed the door open. There, he saw Ariel sleeping on the bed. What shocked him was that Ariel radiated brilliant colors, a sight he had never seen before. Mana points surrounded her, making her appear to shimmer. He was deeply captivated by this beautiful scene, urgently wanting to see her awake. He waited by the bedside until dark, but Ariel never woke. For a moment, he considered using a stone to wake her, but remembering his mother's teachings, he abandoned the idea. The next day, he returned to the forest through the magic circle again. Cedric felt both strange and curious in this time-frozen forest. He gently poked the treants disguised as trees, trying to communicate with them. The treants remained silent, but subtle trembling revealed their true identity. He recalled records about great mage Eshkeda in ancient palace texts, with mana so concentrated. Here, he grew even more curious about the sleeping woman. Suddenly, fairy tales his mother told in childhood surfaced in his mind. Thorn Forest, sleeping princess, brave prince, how similar the plot was. He excitedly ran back to the cottage, deciding to try the method from fairy tales. Standing before the bed, he carefully leaned down and lightly kissed Ariel's forehead, his heart filled with anticipation, believing this kiss could awaken the sleeping princess. Time passed minute by minute, but Ariel showed no reaction. His anticipation gradually cooled, and he began doubting his judgment. Perhaps she wasn't a princess but a cursed witch? Losing patience, he drew the small knife he carried. Since gentle methods were ineffective, perhaps pain could wake her. Just as the blade was about to touch her neck, Ariel opened her eyes. She was first confused, then shocked and furious at the blade near her neck. But Cedric was completely captivated by those golden eyes, forgetting the knife in his hand. These eyes were more beautiful than he imagined, as if containing stars. At that moment, he finally understood what his mother meant by someone you want to possess. The memories gradually fade, and Cedric finds himself in Ariel's cottage. He asks about removing bloodstains, and Ariel hurries over to examine them. Learning that Brian stole his book, she becomes very angry. To comfort Cedric, she decides to give him an even better book, but Cedric shakes his head because that book held special meaning for him. It was the first gift in his life that truly belonged to him. He calmly recounts how he dealt with the servant. Ariel's reaction surprises him. She actually expresses approval. She gently strokes his hair, affirming his eye for an eye approach. This is the first time someone affirmed his actions rather than showing fear or condemnation. Watching her turn to search for stain remover, warmth rises in his heart. From that moment, he secretly decides he will never let anyone take his Ariel away. Meanwhile, discussions in the palace magic tower grow increasingly heated. The mages pass around that mysterious ancient tome, each showing astonishment. They speculate about the book's origins, but reach no reasonable conclusions. Ansel Price stands quietly in the corner, listening to everyone's statements. He keenly notices the differences between the magic circles in the book and existing systems. When the discussion pauses, he silently leaves the magic tower to make his report. In a lavishly decorated secret chamber, he begins his respectful report. That magic book is perfectly preserved, nothing like a 1,000-year-old artifact. A figure in the shadows moves slightly, issuing new instructions. He is ordered to closely monitor Prince Cedric and determine the book's true source. Ansel lowers his head in acknowledgement, contemplation flashing in his eyes. Cedric walks alone in the palace garden, keenly sensing movements behind him. He whirls around, glimpsing two figures hastily hiding in the bushes. The trackers think they're well hidden, unaware they've already been exposed. When one peeks out to check, he's shocked to find Cedric crouching right in front of them, staring. Both flee in panic, leaving Cedric looking annoyed. He recognizes them as mages from the magic tower, disdaining their clumsy surveillance. Thinking about how Ariel's gift has caused such commotion, he only feels irritated. Now even going to the forest requires extra caution to avoid exposing his whereabouts. Suddenly, he senses another presence, but turning around reveals no one. This presence is more concealed. Even he cannot pinpoint it accurately. After confirming no one is around, he quickly heads to the magic circle and leaves. After he disappears, Ansel emerges from hiding, breathing a sigh of relief. He carefully observes this still-functioning ancient teleportation circle, deep in thought. As soon as Cedric reaches the forest, he urgently finds Ariel to explain the situation. He complains that the trackers are terrible, completely lacking in stealth. Hearing this, Ariel falls into thought, realizing the seriousness of the problem. She immediately decides to teach him magic to erase traces, just in case. Cedric tries excitedly and grasps the technique instantly. Watching him play around invisibly in the forest, Ariel can't help but smile. To ensure safety, she gifts him more magic books for emergencies. From then on, their forest lessons gain new content. In autumn, they use magic to play music and dance to the melodies. In winter, they sit in the house filled with oranges, watching snow and chatting. In spring, they cultivate magical plants and harvest colorful fruits. In summer, they summon cool rain to dispel the heat. The forest gently accepts this frequent little visitor. One late night, Ariel finds treants still waiting for Cedric's arrival. She softly advises the treants not to invest too much emotion, as human lifespans are brief. For her, this connection is merely a fleeting moment in her long existence. Yet even so, she treasures this rare warmth. Time flies, and Cedric gradually grows up. One day, he puts on the shirt Daniel left behind, and it fits surprisingly well. He goes to the study to ask Ariel if he can keep this shirt. Only then does Ariel realize with shock that the once oversized shirt now fits him perfectly. She gazes at the tall young man before her, suddenly aware of time's passage. Cedric has grown from a small boy into a young man. Ariel gently asks his current age. Cedric proudly announces he's 15 years old. He gestures at their height difference, claiming he'll soon surpass her. In reality, he secretly stands on his tiptoes. But Ariel notices something unusual. He's growing normally in the time-slowed forest. This discovery plunges her into deep thought, her brow furrowing involuntarily. Late at night, she comes alone to the magic circle, moonlight falling on her worried face. The treant accompanies her quietly, as if sensing her anxiety. She realizes Cedric's mana may be more powerful than the forest's seal. If left unchecked, once he fully matures, the seal will inevitably be destroyed. Suddenly, she recalls the devastation of that war. The pain from those days still tugs at her heart. She resolves to take action and prevent tragedy from repeating. So she casts a spell, blocking the magic circle's mana transmission channel. The next morning, Cedric arrives at the magic circle as usual. He skillfully inputs his mana, only to find the magic circle completely unresponsive. He tries repeatedly, but the magic circle refuses to activate. Anxiety appears on his face as he realizes something is wrong on the forest side. He begins calling Ariel's name loudly, his voice filled with urgency. Cedric's calls continue from dawn to dusk without ceasing. On the other end of the magic circle, Ariel clearly hears his cries. She sits facing the magic circle, closing her eyes to listen quietly. Ariel whispers to the treant that this day was bound to come. Returning to the cottage, she finds traces of Cedric's presence everywhere. Scattered magic books and carelessly placed teacups all remind her of his existence. She picks up a coat he left behind, his scent still lingering on it. A few golden strands of hair on the floor glimmer in the sunlight. She smiles bitterly, remembering how she always said he shed like a puppy. Every corner tells the story of their time together. She resolves to begin a thorough cleaning. At this moment, sudden dizziness strikes, and she feels familiar drowsiness. This is the sign of impending long slumber, something she has grown accustomed to. She looks at the unfinished cleaning and decides to let nature take its course. She hopes that when she wakes, the passage of time will have faded all this. Heavy rain falls in the palace courtyard late at night. Cedric still guards the magic circle, refusing to leave. In the curtain of rain, only his lonely figure remains, along with his persistent calls. In the palace corridors, servants whisper among themselves about Prince Cedric's abnormal behavior. They say he spends entire days by the courtyard magic circle, frantically calling out a name. Just then, a distraught Cedric happens to pass by, scattering the crowd in fright. He mutters to himself about finding a way to the forest, his expression dazed. At the corner, he accidentally bumps into a white-haired man who has been waiting. The man inquires with false concern, but Cedric violently shakes off his hand. Cedric warns him viciously not to touch him, then turns and leaves. He rushes into the library, frantically searching through every book about forest magic. Book after book gets thrown to the ground, yet he finds no useful information. Records about the monster forest are far too scarce, making him increasingly agitated. Suddenly, he recalls how Ariel once gave him many magic books to study on his own. Back then, she said she would be busy and told him to memorize all the magic circles first. Thinking back now, that was perhaps her premeditated arrangement. He realizes the magic circle was blocked deliberately by Ariel. Fury surges through him as he vows to find another way into the forest. Late into the night, he is exhausted, and he falls into deep sleep among the piles of books. Several servants take the opportunity to slip in and clean, carefully tidying the scattered books. One of them accidentally touches his treasured magic book. Cedric wakes instantly and grabs the person's wrist violently. He threatens harshly to cut off their hands and drives everyone out. In the empty library, he clutches the magic book tightly. Ariel's scent still lingers in the book, leaving him both attached and agonized. He questions Ariel sorrowfully about why she abandoned and betrayed him. In his rage, a dark thought takes root in his heart. He will imprison this traitor in a room only he can enter and exit, never to leave. But immediately after, he feels regret and shame for his thoughts. He returns to the magic circle again, only to find the white-haired man has been waiting for some time. The man sees through his dilemma of wanting to reach the monster forest. He indicates he knows the magic circle's channel has been blocked. Cedric urgently asks if there are other ways to enter the forest. The white-haired man slowly reveals the only method, deploying a large army to suppress the monsters. Cedric asks self-mockingly where he would get an army. The man replies meaningfully, he simply needs to become emperor. Since the crown prince's death, palace power has split into 3 major factions. The second prince has gained full support from the Night Order and is closest to the throne. The third prince has support from his mother, born a saint, gaining recognition from the temple. Behind the fourth prince stand noble leaders and the empire's largest merchant guild. Hearing about competing for the throne, Cedric cannot help but laugh self-mockingly. He reminds reminds the man he is merely a maid's son with no capital to compete. But Ansel points out that the ancient magic he commands is the true power. The Empire's foundation lies in magic and magitech engineering, and they control this force. Ansel promises to dedicate this power to him, asking only one condition. He hopes Cedric will allow them to journey together to that mysterious forest. The truth they have pursued for centuries, and the secrets of the ancient war lie there. Ansel formally introduces himself and extends his hand in invitation. Cedric falls silent for a moment, then finally grasps that hand. Ansel solemnly promises to protect Cedric until the end and clear the path ahead for him. They begin taking action, first securing support from mages and magitech scholars, then gaining the Knight Order's loyalty, eliminating political enemies step by step, finally making the nobility submit and helping him ascend to the throne. After his coronation, all preparations are complete. Finally, the day of reunion arrives, and Cedric announces their immediate departure for the forest. Meanwhile, Ariel awakens from her long slumber. Pushing open the door, the house is spotlessly clean, all traces erased by time. She checks the seal and finds the magic circle still in its blocked state. The treant appears worriedly, but she says her heart no longer aches. The forest has returned to its former tranquility, with no more voices calling for her. She recalls that blonde apprentice, lively as a puppy, and hopes he lives happily. Just as she thinks everything has returned to peace, enormous shadows descend upon the forest. A meteor storm suddenly arrives, crashing down around her. She discovers with shock that someone is casting advanced magic to attack the forest. The treants rapidly merge into a tree dragon, attempting to block the invaders. Ariel tries to buy time to escape, but it's already too late. Cedric coldly summons a lightning storm, purple bolts striking down directly. Ariel is knocked to the ground, struggling to flee. In the chaos, a figure stands before her from above. She looks up to see the mage attacking the forest, her heart filled with confusion. She cannot understand why this supreme ruler would attack her home. Cedric crouches down and gently lifts her face. Before she can recognize him, he speaks his marriage proposal. Ariel is stunned speechless by his sudden action, her mind in complete chaos. First meteor storms, then lightning attacks, and now a marriage proposal? This logic completely baffles her. She struggles to clear her thoughts, trying to determine this stranger's identity and purpose. Yet that dazzling golden hair and deep blue eyes feel strangely familiar. If that child grew a bit taller, more mature, an incredible hypothesis forms in her mind. Cedric softly speaks of 10 years of longing, his voice carrying suppressed emotion. He confesses that destroying the forest was to see her, presenting it as a wedding gift. This explanation confuses Ariel even more. Then he inquires about the magic circle's condition. The next second, he suddenly lifts her high in the air. Laughing, he says this is a wish he buried for 10 years. Ariel struggles and demands to be put down, but feels his strength, so different from before. After setting her down, he takes her hand and walks toward the magic circle. Only then does she truly feel the changes 10 years have brought. The once naive youth has grown into a mature man. At this moment, Cedric discovers the insulating material blocking the mana channel and instantly understands. He kicks away the insulating material and unilaterally restarts the magic circle. He makes it clear that now that he has found her, he will definitely take her away. Ariel notices his smile that doesn't reach his eyes and feels a chill behind her. Thinking of the forest's self-repair ability, she begins hesitating whether to leave. This is the first time since the ancient war she has considered stepping out of this forest. At this moment, Cedric orders the Knight Order to escort them through the magic circle, while others handle cleanup. Hearing the Knights address him as Your Majesty, Ariel is utterly shocked. In the blink of an eye, they have passed through the magic circle back to the palace. Servants respectfully line up to greet them, displaying his noble status. She finally confirms that he has indeed become the Empire's emperor. He explains casually that becoming emperor was merely to gain the power to enter the forest. Ariel recalls his former situation in the family, finding it even more unbelievable. She demands to know how he went from a bullied prince to the supreme emperor. He only says gently that this long story can be told slowly. After all, they have all the time ahead of them. He leads her through the palace corridors, introducing what will become their new home. Ariel repeats his words in confusion, not understanding his underlying meaning. He admits frankly that becoming emperor was only for her, as it was the only way to enter the forest. Ariel angrily retorts that burning the forest has no connection to doing her any favors. He seizes the opportunity to propose making her empress. This sudden proposal stuns both Ariel and the surrounding servants. He takes it for granted that since the forest is destroyed, she has nowhere to go. Ariel feels utterly helpless. Who makes someone homeless before proposing? He brings her to a meticulously arranged room. Before she can react, the door is already locked. Only then does she realize she has been imprisoned in this red room. Looking around, from the bed to the curtains, everything is blood red. This suffocating environment makes her suspect this is his revenge. She collapses exhaustedly on the bed, recalling every moment they spent together. She cannot understand why her past kindness has resulted in present imprisonment. She recalls the warning about not sheltering the black-haired beast and smiles bitterly. It turns out the point was not about hair color, but about not giving one's heart easily to others. With this regret, she gradually falls into an uneasy sleep. In her dream, she returns once more to that battlefield littered with corpses. She searches desperately for survivors but finds only countless dead souls. The dead souls accuse her of wrongdoing, their voices full of resentment. Just as she despairs, she discovers a dying figure. She rushes forward and tightly embraces the man named Daniel. The pain of losing everything makes her cry profusely in her dream. When she jolts awake, she finds she is truly crying. Before recovering from the nightmare's aftermath, she hears a man's questioning voice. Cedric suddenly appears by the bed, demanding to know Daniel's identity. She shrinks back in fright, nearly falling off the bed. Fortunately, he reaches out in time and pulls her into his arms. Their distance closes instantly, and she feels his suffocating possessiveness. She blushes, and her heart races from this sudden closeness, turning her gaze away at a loss. He gives her no chance to breathe, cornering her against the bed again to demand Daniel's identity. Ariel tries to push him away but finds his strength far exceeds before, completely immovable. Her heartbeat accelerates continuously, but he suddenly releases her, letting her fall back onto the bed. The intimate atmosphere makes her extremely nervous, various possible developments flashing through her mind. Yet the next second, he lifts her high in the air again, as if reliving past games. He gently sets her on the edge of the bed, his tone carrying tolerance and patience. He understands she has secrets and is willing to wait for the day she opens her heart voluntarily. Then he asks with concern why Ariel had a nightmare. She cannot help but complain that this room full of red prevents her from sleeping, suspecting it is his revenge. He does not understand why she dislikes this arrangement. She angrily accuses him of making the room terrifying like a sea of blood. Only then does he explain that he remembered her saying red was her favorite color. Memories surge forth, and she recalls indeed saying such words in the forest garden. This simple sentiment makes her feel slightly warm, but seeing his smug expression, she immediately sobers up. She firmly demands immediate replacement of all red decorations to restore normal room arrangements. He readily agrees to change the decorations, but becomes evasive when she demands removal of the door lock. He skillfully changes the subject, gently stroking her head and telling her to bathe and change clothes first. She complains about him getting cocky now that he's taller while following the maid's guidance toward the bathroom. Only after stepping into the bathroom does she realize with shock that he has fooled her again, making her forget to demand returning to the forest. Hearing her roar from the bathroom, Cedric outside the door cannot help but show a triumphant smile. He mutters to himself that she is still so easy to fool, forgetting her original purpose once distracted. At the same time, he instructs Ansel to change the room decorations immediately. Outside the bathroom, a blonde maid expresses disdain for Ariel's identity and status. Another gray-haired maid sternly warns her to watch her words and not cause trouble. The blonde maid remains indignant, questioning what qualifies Ariel to compete with noble ladies for the empress position. The silver-haired maid responds calmly, stating she does not wish to be involved in these disputes, and reminds her again to control her mouth. After bathing, Ariel feels refreshed and can finally think calmly about her current situation. At this moment, she discovers the decorations have been changed perfectly, with red elements appropriately accented. Cedric sits nearby, his gaze constantly following her every movement, watching his transformation. She cannot help but reminisce about how adorable he was as a child. He misunderstands her meaning, thinking she only likes him as he was when young. He believes it is because he grew up that she abandoned him outside the forest. As he speaks, tears actually fall, his expression pitiful and sorrowful. Ariel knows this is his scheme but still cannot help softening. Seeing tears on his beautiful face, she almost reaches out to comfort him. Just as she hesitates, he suddenly says ominously that he will eliminate all children. Ariel is shocked speechless by Cedric's extreme idea of eliminating all children. She hastily begs him not to harm innocent children, solemnly promising she will never abandon him again. Cedric takes the opportunity to pull her into his embrace, placing a gentle kiss on her forehead. He then indicates that is enough for today, considerately giving her space to be alone. Ariel watches him leave in confusion from the room, her heart full of bewilderment. Outside the door, Cedric shows a meaningful smile, his eyes profound. He quietly sets up powerful sealing magic outside the room, ensuring she cannot escape. He will completely imprison her, eliminating any possibility of escape. He recalls that desperate night calling her name in the rain. Determined not to repeat that mistake, he vows to keep her by his side forever. This palace is the magnificent birdcage meticulously crafted for her. Even in death, she can only end her life within this palace. Meanwhile, the monster forest fills with an eerie dark purple magical aura. A mage discovers with surprise a massive ancient seal. Everyone is shocked by the seal's scale and power, not daring to act rashly. Finally, they decide to immediately report this major discovery to the Emperor. Ansel reports the situation to Cedric. That cavern, emanating an ominous aura, appears forbidding. After preliminary assessment, this is very likely a seal left by Great Mage Escade. Given that no one can break such powerful magic, the investigation is temporarily suspended. In Ariel's quarters, a maid has just helped her change into fitted clothing. The blonde maid will temporarily be responsible for attending to her daily needs. After handing her a list of palace facilities, she respectfully withdraws. Ariel assumes this is merely an ordinary guide and pays it no mind. Upon opening the list, she discovers with shock she cannot recognize any of the text. Only then does she realize that during her slumber in the forest, the outside world's script has evolved. Back then, Cedric was not illiterate, but simply could not read ancient script. Thinking she has become illiterate in this era, Ariel instantly feels immensely ashamed. She hurries to chase after the maid for help but hesitates before speaking. She worries that revealing her illiteracy will invite mockery. At this moment, her attention is drawn to a decoration on the wall. The content on it feels very familiar, and she instinctively reaches out to touch it. The maid frantically stops her action, her tone carrying reproach. She says it is a precious artifact left by a great mage from 1,000 years ago and cannot be touched casually. Ariel is shocked that 1,000 years have passed, far beyond her imagination. What makes her both laugh and cry is that this so-called artifact was merely her casual doodle from back then. The maid continues scolding, demanding that someone of her humble birth learn to observe proper etiquette. These words thoroughly infuriate Ariel, and she decides to tolerate no more. She gazes directly at the maid with a dignified look, her presence instantly overwhelming the other. She questions whether showing contempt for the Emperor's guest conforms to palace etiquette. The maid is intimidated by her suddenly displayed noble bearing and becomes flustered. Under Ariel's pressure, the maid trembles and kneels to beg for mercy. Ariel reaches out to press down on her head, teaching her not to belittle the Emperor's guest. Thinking this reflects people's disrespect toward the Emperor, she grows even angrier. Recalling how Cedric was bullied as a child, her heart aches. She worries that even as Emperor, he still does not know how to establish authority. Just then, Cedric arrives upon hearing the commotion and inquires about the situation. He considerately removes his coat and drapes it over her, worried she might catch cold. Ariel urgently tells him about the problem of palace servants lacking discipline. She seriously analyzes that this will affect imperial authority and must be strictly addressed. Cedric keenly catches the misunderstanding in her words and has a sudden inspiration. He immediately puts on a vulnerable appearance, tears welling in his eyes. He pitifully begs Ariel to protect him, like an injured puppy. This tactic works perfectly, and Ariel's heart softens instantly. She solemnly promises to protect him, her tone firm yet gentle. Cedric smiles triumphantly inwardly, his plan having succeeded. He then inquires with concern about why she rushed out. Ariel hesitates whether to confess the fact that she is illiterate. Thinking about how she once taught him to read and now must ask him for help, she feels embarrassed. Finally, she can only stammer an admission that she cannot read modern script. Hearing this, Cedric shows a meaningful smile. She hastily explains she only cannot read modern script but is proficient in ancient script, but he still secretly rejoices at discovering this weakness of hers. However, the next second he changes the subject, mentioning the past. In the past, he would have patiently taught her anything, but she chose to abandon him. Ariel is flustered by his sudden accusation, her eyes panicked, but he suddenly puts on a gentle mask, a faint smile playing at his lips. He says casually he will not teach her to read, making her forever dependent on him. Before the words finish, he locks her back in the room, ignoring all her protests. Behind the door, she stamps her feet in anger, cursing him as ungrateful. Outside the door, Cedric shows a meaningful smile. He finds her misunderstanding about his unstable imperial power quite amusing. When Ansel asks if he wants to clarify the misunderstanding, he shakes his head casually. Instead, he praises the noble bearing she displayed, certain she has an unknown background. Then his gaze turns to the maid still kneeling and trembling, his voice suddenly turning cold. The maid defends herself tremblingly, her voice carrying a sob. He laughs coldly, pointing out that belittling Ariel is slapping his own face. With a light gesture, guards immediately step forward to drag the maid away. The maid's shrill pleas for mercy echo through the corridor, fading into the distance. He coldly orders a thorough reform of the improper atmosphere in the palace. Meanwhile, rumors outside the palace about the mysterious woman intensify. People whisper that she is crude and ignorant, unworthy of the emperor. They speculate whether the emperor simply prefers such uncultured women. In the palace, designers bow respectfully to Ariel. They indicate they will custom design the most fashionable court court gowns for her. Ariel is bewildered by this commotion, her face full of confusion. Cedric explains gently that she needs proper attire in the palace. The designers present thick catalogs, asking her to select preferred styles. Before she can speak, he jumps in to say red is her favorite color. She hastily stops him, warning him not to interfere recklessly. She huffs that he will definitely make a gown so red it hurts the eyes. He smiles foolishly, his face showing an innocent expression of being caught out. The designers exchange glances, finding this interaction pattern strangely familiar. Someone mutters quietly that it resembles training one's own pet. Then they cover their mouth, in horror, realizing they spoke wrongly. Yet the woman before them indeed seems to be taming a fierce beast, and the emperor willingly accepts it, like a begging golden retriever. Soon, rumors of the emperor has a beast tamer spread throughout the palace. Upon hearing this, Ariel feels both ashamed and annoyed, wishing she could find a hole to hide in. She feels being illiterate is embarrassing enough, and now this adds insult to injury. She resolves that, no matter what, she must leave this troublesome place. But the reality of being penniless and not knowing the way leaves her completely at a loss. After much thought, she proposes wanting to inspect the magic circle. She casually expresses curiosity about the magic circle's current state. Cedric nods thoughtfully and agrees to her request. He also mysteriously says he has a surprise for her. She follows him suspiciously out the door, her heart uneasy. Soon after, she understands the so-called surprise and is shocked speechless. The entire monster forest has been moved intact to the palace. Upon seeing them, the treants immediately rush over happily, their branches swaying joyfully. Cedric smiles and grasps its branches, gently saying it still recognizes him so easily. The scene flashes back to the day of the forest attack. The tree dragon roars to meet the enemy but freezes upon seeing who it is. It immediately transforms back into the familiar small treant form and bursts into tears. It excitedly throws itself into his arms, holding tight and refusing to let go. Ariel cannot help muttering quietly that he clearly smashed the forest into chaos with meteors. He defends himself aggrievedly, saying he deliberately avoided the core area and healed all the damaged parts. Now bringing them to the palace, they can both protect the forest and watch over the magic circle, achieving both goals. He then proudly states they have been good friends since childhood. Ariel smiles helplessly, then bends down to carefully observe the magic circle. Deep in thought, she discovers this magic circle should originally be in southern Arendelle but now appears in the palace. She wonders how the portal's fixed position could have changed. Cedric explains softly that this is an ancient ruin discovered in the fields. An emperor who particularly loved magic deliberately built the new palace over the ruins. Unfortunately, no one knew how to use this circle, so it was eventually abandoned. He says earnestly that it was this forgotten magic circle that brought them together. Ariel's face flushes red instantly, and her heartbeat quickens. She hastily changes the subject, praising how well preserved the magic circle is. Upon closer inspection, she recalls the preservation magic on it was not cast by her. This is the work of great mage Arsenar. She feels some regret for not asking him how he created magic that could last 1,000 years. Cedric unhappily changes the subject, mentioning many strange things about the forest. He says the cottage was always spotlessly clean, as if time had stopped, and after all these years her appearance has not changed at all, still matching his memories. Speaking of this, he cannot help but feel regretful that he has grown and aged. She guiltily shifts her gaze away, not daring to meet his eyes. But he continues analyzing, saying the forest contains not only Eshkede's mana, there are also traces of another great mage, Arsenar's mana. He suddenly leans close to Ariel's ear, whispering softly. He confesses he has long suspected she might be Eshkede herself. After researching extensively, he also discovered Daniel is very likely Arsenar. Ariel's heart skips a beat, not expecting him to guess so accurately. She forces herself to stay calm, planning to continue playing dumb to get by. But he suddenly says he heard the two of them were once lovers. She immediately retorts excitedly, firmly denying this absurd rumor, because in fact, Daniel is her own brother. Late at night, the saint prays silently before flickering candlelight. In the swaying candlelight, she suddenly opens her eyes wide. The divine oracle says the palace is shrouded in an ominous aura. The next day, the saint hears maids quietly gossiping about the woman the emperor brought back. They think the taming talk is absurd, but even more absurd is that the emperor wants to make her empress. Upon seeing the saint approach, they quickly fall silent and bow. Saint Violet stands there quietly, listening to their discussions. Moonlight falls on her worried face, as she says softly that the palace has indeed become different. Daniel is not only the renowned great mage Arsenar, but also Ariel's own brother. The two siblings were just like children in any ordinary family, always bickering and playful fighting, yet deeply bonded. The only difference was that both possessed extraordinary magical talent, making their competitions particularly spectacular. She remembers how every magical duel with Daniel would eventually devolve into childish roughhousing. She remembers always favoring the full body tackle, while Daniel would always dodge while protecting his head. During their fights, they would always complain about each other targeting vital spots. When Whenever things got out of hand, their eldest sister, the crown princess, would always appear in time to stop them. Their sister would always ask them, exasperated yet amused, why mages would insist on fighting with their fists. They would always beg for mercy in unison, yet never change their love for rough play. Recalling these memories, Ariel shows a nostalgic smile. Watching her expression, Cedric presses her about her relationship with Arsenor, his tone laced with jealousy. She evades the question in a flustered manner, telling him to research it himself, unwilling to continue this conversation. Ariel flees back to her room, her mind racing as she realizes he has already guessed the truth. Thinking about how she has lived for over 1,000 years, she really does not want to admit this fact. She paces back and forth in her room, finally deciding to leave the palace and return to the forest. Although she knows Cedric will not easily let her go, she still decides to try communicating with him. Gently pushing open the door, she is surprised to find he has been waiting outside all along. He says softly that he has been waiting for her decision, his eyes filled with anticipation. Gathering her courage, she requests to return to the forest, promising not to seal the magic circle again. After a moment of silence, he reminds her that the cabin in the forest no longer exists. She demands to know why. She is shocked and unable to understand how a house protected by restoration magic could disappear. He says with a smile that to completely prevent the house from restoring itself, he broke down every single plank into molecules. Seeing her shocked expression, he quickly adds that he has brought all her belongings back to the palace. She suddenly realizes that all those people bustling about in the palace were moving her things. At that moment, an old notebook falls from the items being transported. She recognizes it with horror as her diary from her youth, urgently telling him to bring it over. The mages discover excitedly that they can actually read the text in this ancient book. They discuss animatedly, believing this to be an important document for studying the relationship between the two great mages. Watching the diary being passed around by everyone, she feels utterly embarrassed. The mages discuss heatedly the name Arsenor that appears frequently in the book. Someone speculates that a certain word appearing frequently in the book might be an ancient term of endearment for lovers. She screams internally that it was clearly a word she used to scold Daniel. Cedric's expression grows increasingly dark, his tone carrying suppressed anger. She sees the jealousy in his eyes and hurriedly explains that this is all a misunderstanding. Finally, under his persistent questioning, she has no choice but to admit she is eschkade. He shows a triumphant smile, saying softly that he had already guessed the truth, but he insisted on hearing her say the secret herself. Ariel finally admits her identity, eager to retrieve her belongings. Watching the mages, with their eyes gleaming with interest, she knows they will not easily let go. Having a sudden inspiration, she deliberately uses reverse psychology, saying Cedric is truly a pathetic emperor. Cedric, now in good spirits, immediately orders Ansel to retrieve the diary. Ansel quickly retrieves the diary from the mages. Cedric takes the diary and curiously turns it over repeatedly, wanting to know what secrets it contains. Only then does Ariel remember he can read ancient script, and she jumps up frantically trying to snatch it, but he deliberately holds the diary high above his head, keeping it out of reach no matter how much she stands on tiptoes. She stamps her feet in frustration, threatening that if he dares to peek, she will immediately return to the forest. These words are like a bucket of cold water, instantly extinguishing his smile. His expression darkens, his voice cold as ice, saying she always talks about leaving so casually. Yet during the days she was gone, he was constantly suppressing the darkness within his heart. His voice becomes hoarse as he describes how desperate he felt all those years staring at the sealed magic circle. Back then, he swore that no matter what methods he had to use, he would see her again. He reaches out to gently touch her neck, saying in a low voice that he once only wanted to make her disappear from this world, thinking that if he could not have her, he might as well destroy her completely, so he would not suffer anymore. But after much thought, he still could not bear to let her truly disappear. He finally decided to keep her locked by his side forever, so her eyes would see only him. After saying this, he suddenly smiles again, asking for a reward like a child asking for candy. She mutters while breaking out in a cold sweat, saying it really is just an ordinary diary. He blinks, becoming even more interested, and makes a gesture to open the diary. She frantically jumps in place, telling him to hurry up and burn the diary. He cheerfully snaps his fingers, and the diary instantly turns to ash and flames. Then he persistently asks about her relationship with Arsenor, his tone dripping with jealousy. Ariel finally confesses that Daniel is actually her own brother. His eyes light up immediately, the corners of his mouth lifting involuntarily. He honestly admits that if they had been lovers, he would have had the heart to dig up graves and desecrate corpses. Fortunately, since it is just her brother, he will not hold it against her. He then curiously asks why she has been hiding her identity as a great mage. She explains helplessly that she does not want others to know she is already over 1,000 years old. But he is confused, pointing out that the magic she left behind is still benefiting everyone even now. Should she not feel proud as a great mage? Why not tell everyone? She gives a bitter smile and shakes her head, saying the history books never recorded the great mistake she made. She still carries a secret buried for 1,000 years. She is the one responsible for the world's destruction and the deaths of countless people. 1,000 years ago, The world was engulfed in war, with smoke and the stench of death permeating everywhere. The Keswin Empire declared it would judge Arendelle for allying with demons, their voices echoing across the battlefield. The Clady Republic announced its alliance with Keswin to jointly crusade against the magical kingdom of Arendelle. Ariel still finds it hard to believe that they would launch such a mad war. The two great powers formed an alliance, attempting to overwhelm the magical kingdom of Arendelle with numerical superiority. Those fanatical believers were blinded by their so-called deities, forgetting one crucial fact. They overlooked that Arendelle was a nation founded by mages, possessing formidable magical power. The kingdom immediately issued an emergency summons to all mages, preparing for battle. Thus, countless mages rushed to the battlefield without hesitation. She and Daniel, as Arendelle's royalty and most powerful mages, resolutely joined the war. They unleashed magic far beyond ordinary capabilities, crushing the kingdom's enemies one by one. However, the war spread like a runaway horse, escalating cruelly and intensifying. As time passed, this war ultimately led to the destruction of the world. The Empire, the Republic, and even their own kingdom were all reduced to ashes. Ariel gazes at the devastation everywhere, tears blurring her vision. She falls to her knees weakly, feeling as if knives are piercing her heart. Everything has disappeared. Nothing remains. Her parents, her sister, and her beloved brother all perished in that catastrophe. Regret floods her heart like a tide. She should not have let them go to the battlefield. She cries out desperately, blaming all the faults on herself. Only after her tears dry does she notice the eerie portal on the battlefield. After losing everything, she finally realizes that this war concealed a conspiracy from another dimension. She understands that the deity Keswin worshipped was actually an entity from another dimension, and it was the portal she herself opened that gave them the opportunity to interfere with this world. Rage burns within her heart, and she vows to stop all of this. Not only will she close the portal, but she will completely sever the connection between dimensions. She uses every last bit of her mana and finally seals the portal completely. The moment she completes the seal, she collapses from exhaustion, unable to stand again. Thus, she severed the connection between dimensions. Having exhausted all her mana, she survived alone in the forest with great difficulty. The long years spent in the forest were her punishment for herself. She must prevent entities from other dimensions from setting foot on this land again. But now, she can only tell Cedric the most important thing. The world's destruction was all her fault. She is the main culprit, so she must return to the forest to spend the rest of her life in repentance, seeking forgiveness and praying for world peace. Cedric listens to her confession about destroying the world, looking thoughtful. He, who had planned not to leave the palace for a while, suddenly changes his mind. He summons Ansel and orders immediate preparations to leave the palace. Then he extends his hand to Ariel, wanting to show her the world she believes she destroyed. The carriage slowly heads outside the palace. As soon as they exit the palace gates, Ariel is stunned by the scene before her. The roads are smooth and wide, the buildings sturdy and beautiful, prosperity evident everywhere. The streets are bustling with people, lively and full of vitality. Not just in one area, the entire city is well ordered and well managed. Only now does she realize the world has undergone tremendous changes. As she remains immersed in amazement, the carriage stops in front of a magnificent building. Cedric elegantly extends his hand, inviting Ariel to step down from the carriage. She looks up at the towering, magnificent building, holding her breath. The manager and attendants are already lined up at the entrance, their manner extremely respectful. She looks at Cedric in confusion, not understanding why they have come to a hotel. He mysteriously says he wants to take her to the highest point to see the most beautiful view. Standing on the top floor observation deck, he signals her to look outside the window. At first, the sky is calm and undisturbed, nothing unusual at all. Suddenly, a massive magic circle slowly materializes in the air. Immediately after, a streamlined airship gracefully passes through the magic circle. She opens her mouth wide in astonishment, unable to believe what she is seeing. Cedric explains gently that this is the newly developed aerial transport system. He pushes open the window, letting her see more clearly. More airships follow one after another, tracing graceful arcs across the sky. He proudly explains that these are all new technologies that have emerged in recent years. The world has not been destroyed as she thought, but has instead been revitalized with new life. Magic circles are visible everywhere, perfectly integrated with people's daily lives. This brand new world is more beautiful than she could have imagined. She asks softly for the name of this nation, her voice trembling slightly. The Human Alliance of Science and Technology. The Araheim Empire, he answers. This name awakens her long-sealed memories. In a daze, she seems to return to that afternoon 1,000 years ago when she discussed the war with Daniel. Daniel had mentioned a small alliance in the south that rejected magic. Back then, she held no hope for it, only wishing for the war to end quickly. She never imagined this small alliance would not only survive, but also develop into such a powerful empire. Her 1,000 years of guarding and waiting finally have meaning at this moment. Tears of emotion slide down silently, and she finally stops blaming herself. Cedric gently wipes wipes away her tears, his movements as delicate as if handling a priceless treasure. He sincerely invites her to witness the future of this world together. Then, he proposes to her again, his gaze passionate and resolute. Her heart skips a beat, but reason quickly returns, reminding her of the insurmountable gap of time between them. She gently withdraws her hand, tactfully declining his proposal. However, she agrees to stay in the palace for now to properly see this new world. A few days later, Ariel sits alone in her room in a daze, feeling utterly bored. With Cedric absent, she does not even have anyone to talk to. She can only spend all day by the window, watching the occasional passerby to relieve her boredom. Suddenly, a woman dressed in an unusual manner catches her attention. Her attire resembles neither that of a maid nor any noble she has seen. The woman senses her gaze and elegantly turns to bow to her. Sunlight falls on the woman's gentle, smiling face, making her appear especially warm and captivating. Ariel unconsciously smiles back, warmth flooding her heart. St. Violet's maid watches Ariel's direction, her tone full of indignation. She protests on behalf of the saint, believing the emperor's choice is truly unacceptable. The saint gently stops her maid's complaints, reminding her to be cautious with her words. Although she too feels displeased, she still maintains a proper smile. The two quickly leave this unpleasant location. As night falls, an increasing crowd gathers on a certain street in the city. People point and discuss the strange scene in the alley, talking amongst themselves. Someone has already reported the case, but the investigator has yet to arrive, intensifying everyone's panic. At this moment, the saint's arrival immediately quiets the scene. She carefully observes the traces on the ground, her expression gradually becoming grave. She recognizes these as traces of some kind of ritual ceremony, and this is not the first occurrence. Some in the crowd begin speculating this is the work of a cult, the atmosphere growing more tense. The saint takes the opportunity to mention a divine oracle received recently, hinting at disaster coming to the palace. People immediately connect this to the mysterious woman the emperor recently brought back. The maid suggests immediately revealing the truth in the temple's name, but the saint stops her. The saint says meaningfully that rumors need time to ferment to achieve maximum effect. She plans to wait patiently until the timing is right before striking decisively. Meanwhile, the atmosphere inside Marquise Kate's estate is thick with anger. The saint's mother, the Marchioness, is furious about the emperor unilaterally deciding the choice of empress. Her voice trembles with rage, considering this nothing short of an insult to the noble class. A subordinate, with his face hidden under a hat, timely proposes a plan. He plans to exploit the fact that Ariel cannot read to create major trouble. He indicates he is already arranging personnel to plant someone close to Ariel. Back in the palace, the maids are heatedly discussing news about selecting a personal attendant for the distinguished guest. The generous compensation has many eager to apply, with discussions buzzing continuously. A woman with short pink hair shows a meaningful smile. She approaches Ansel proactively, proposing to serve as Ariel's dedicated attendant. Ansel brings her before Ariel, briefly explaining the situation. Ariel is surprised to discover she is of mixed human and elf heritage. After Ansel leaves, only the two of them remain in the room. Just as Ariel feels thirsty, Rachel timely offers her a drink. This thoughtful gesture instead makes Ariel suspicious. She does not recall showing signs of thirst, leading her to suspect she has been observing her all along. The next day, as morning sunlight filters through the curtains, Ariel slowly rises. The moment she opens her eyes, she sees Rachel standing silently by her bed. She recoils in fright, thinking to herself that the maid must have stood watch all night. Every time she turns around, she meets those calm, expressionless eyes, making her feel utterly uncomfortable. Although Rachel remains perfectly quiet, her omnipresent gaze is truly unnerving. She has a sudden inspiration, thinking of a clever way to escape this surveillance. She excitedly proposes visiting the palace library, thinking she can finally have some peace. A flicker of surprise crosses Rachel's eyes, clearly not expecting someone who cannot read to want to visit a library. Ariel bounces between bookshelves, selecting only books with beautiful illustrations. She silently prays that Rachel will not follow too closely. This is her rare moment of solitude. Since Cedric adamantly refuses to teach her to read, she has no choice but to learn secretly on her own. Finally, she selects a children's picture book, happily planning to teach herself to read. Holding the book, she sits on a garden bench and begins earnestly matching pictures with text. At this moment, a small boy wearing a cloak timidly approaches. Looking at the adorable little one, her heart nearly melts. The boy says his teacher sent him to inquire about the great mage's notebook. She immediately becomes alert, firmly stating that the diary has long since been burned to ashes. Just as she is about to send him away, she notices the magic circle on the cloak's lining. This discovery makes her eyes light up, instantly forgetting her previous caution. She studies it with great interest, discovering it is a heat retention magic circle. Unfortunately, the design is flawed, causing excessive mana consumption. She cannot help but launch into an endless explanation of magical principles. Completely unable to stop, the boy listens in complete confusion but still nods obediently. She casually completes the magic circle, and the cloak immediately radiates comfortable warmth. Seeing the boy's delighted expression, she suddenly realizes she has been too conspicuous. She quickly lowers her voice, demanding he keep keep this secret. The boy nods vigorously and runs off in a flash. Just as she breathes a sigh of relief, Rachel's calm voice suddenly sounds behind her. Only then does she realize with alarm that the maid has been watching all along, breaking out in a cold sweat. Watching Rachel's thoughtful expression, her heart pounds with anxiety. Now there is another person whose silence she must secure. The new design of the magic cloak causes a huge stir in the magic tower, with mages arguing endlessly around it. They stare at the newly added line, unable to comprehend the principle behind it. Some say it must have been a lucky guess, but most believe this cannot possibly be coincidence. Some even compare the boy to the emperor, calling him another genius mage. The boy hides in a corner, distressed that he has ruined what the distinguished guest entrusted to him. Cedric sits in Ariel's room, grinning as he asks what good deed she has done. She says casually that she merely modified the magic circle a bit, not expecting it would cause such commotion. He glances at the picture book in her hands, smiling as he says the problem lies precisely in that word merely. He patiently explains that magic once disappeared from this world, and the current level is far inferior. She widens her eyes in shock, unable to believe that magic could actually vanish from the world. He recounts in detail the consequences of that apocalyptic war from 1,000 years ago. The surviving races banded together for survival, rebuilding their homes bit by bit through technology. Only after discovering ancient magic circles did they regain magical power. They move to the balcony, where Cedric points to distant tall buildings and recounts the Empire's development history. He teases that, if her identity were revealed, she would immediately become a national icon. She quickly shakes her head, saying she only wants to live a quiet life. He immediately nods in agreement, saying he has no intention of sharing her with others. Only then does she realize why there are young mages in the palace. Remembering the adorable appearance of that little boy, Ariel cannot help but smile. However, she still feels that young Cedric was the most endearing. She recalls how the little boy who followed her around calling her name has grown into a handsome man. Ariel finds herself staring at his profile in a daze, carefully examining how he has matured. Not until that face draws closer and closer does Ariel suddenly snap back to awareness. She pushes him away frantically, her face flushing red to the ears. She stammers, scolding him for trying to steal someone's first kiss. Cedric looks innocent, asking if her staring at his lips was not an invitation for him to kiss her. Then he smiles mischievously, reminding her that he kissed her when they were children. She jumps in frustration, insisting that does not count. The two banter back and forth, the atmosphere becoming particularly warm. He wisely decides to quit while ahead, smiling as he bids farewell and leaves. As soon as he exits the room, he cannot help but laugh out loud. He recalls that back then he only kissed her forehead, so her first kiss remains untaken. At this moment, Ansel hurries over to report that the temple has sent someone requesting an audience. He immediately becomes alert, sensing this matter is not simple. In the Great Hall, a temple official kneels on the ground reporting a strange illness appearing among the people. He reports that patients appear to have had their life force drained, becoming nothing but skin and bones. He states bluntly that this is the method of cult rituals. His words subtly direct suspicion toward Ariel, who came from the forest. He hints that she is the witch bringing calamity. Hearing someone slander Ariel, Cedric's expression instantly darkens terribly. The official is still secretly pleased with himself for finally speaking up, completely oblivious to the danger. Cedric slowly descends from the throne, each step carrying suffocating, oppressive force. He casually draws a guard's sword, the blade gleaming coldly under the lights. He sneers that there are always those who do not know their place and insist on making trouble. Before he finishes speaking, the blade presses against the official's forehead, blood trickling down his nose. His voice cold as ice, he demands how the man dares slander the future empress. The official is scared out of his wits, kneeling and begging for mercy, his voice shaking uncontrollably. Cedric demands the identity of the mastermind, speculating it is either Phyllis or Violet behind this. Ignoring the official's wails, he directly orders the man dragged away for intensive interrogation. Watching the official being dragged away, his gaze is dark and menacing as he resolves to thoroughly reform the temple. The next day, the maids at Duke Raymond's estate are also discussing the mysterious woman. They whisper among themselves, debating whether the rumors about the witch are true or false. Rosemary Raymond suddenly appears, her eyes shining as she presses for details. Hearing that the emperor personally brought back an empress candidate, she immediately becomes interested. The maids quickly explain that the woman's identity is unclear, she cannot even read, and is unworthy of the position of empress. Rosemary, however, thinks that since rumors are flying everywhere and the emperor does nothing, this woman must be extraordinary. She claps her hands excitedly, deciding to immediately visit the palace to meet this mysterious woman. At this moment, Ariel sits leisurely in the palace forest reading her picture book. Two young maids stand trembling in the distance, not daring to approach this eerie grove. A tree guardian suddenly peeks out from behind a tree, startling them into screaming and clutching each other. Ariel quickly calls the tree guardian back, closes her picture book and rubs her tired eyes. She turns to Rachel, saying she wants to add tables and chairs here for easier reading in the future. At this moment, Cedric arrives, saying he has something to tell her. Cedric tells her about Rosemary's request for an audience, explaining she is one of the 2 Empress candidates. Hearing she is an Empress candidate, Ariel immediately opens her arms happily in support. Seeing his expression change, she quickly composes herself and hands him the picture book to cover her embarrassment. Only then does he notice she is still reading picture books, her reading progress less than ideal. Cedric then explains that arranging their meeting is so she will have a familiar face at the banquet, but Ariel worries the other woman will be hostile since she has taken her place as Empress candidate. He smiles, saying she will definitely like this young lady nicknamed Mad Dog. Her heart skips a beat, wondering if he has discovered she always views him like a puppy. Soon after, Cedric arranges their meeting. Rosemary greets Ariel elegantly, her smile both sweet and bold. After the greeting, she immediately switches to mockery mode, her tone full of provocation. She deliberately criticizes the room as too small, saying it is completely unworthy of an empress. She also disparages the furniture as tacky, saying Cedric's taste is truly lacking. Ariel not only shows no anger but nods seriously in agreement, saying she feels the same way. Rosemary then brings up her illiteracy, her tone full of contempt. But Ariel continues smiling, saying she is currently working hard to learn to read. Rosemary glares in frustration, feeling this woman is completely impervious to criticism. She feels as if she is arguing with her grandmother, who is simply humoring her. She wipes her mouth with a handkerchief, then deliberately drops it on the floor. Then she huffs and stands up to leave. The maids watch dumbfounded, thinking this young lady is extremely rude, but Ariel cups her cheeks, her eyes shining as she says Rosemary is adorable. She thinks Rosemary is like a yappy little puppy one cannot help but want to tease. The maids exchange bewildered looks, finally understanding this distinguished guest's peculiar preferences. Ariel cheerfully heads toward the library with the maids. Halfway there, the little boy suddenly runs after them, his face excited. He says that, thanks to her help, he has become an official mage, but he feels guilty about taking credit, his voice growing quieter. Ariel gently pats his head, saying that keeping the secret is the best way to repay her. The boy notices the picture book in her hands and offers to teach her to read. She happily agrees, finding the child increasingly endearing. At this point, he introduces himself as Urian Ray. Looking at Urian's fluffy hair, she is reminded again of young Cedric. The maids sigh on the sidelines, helpless about Ariel constantly thinking of young Seti at every turn. Afterward, the two go to the library to study, with Urian teaching with great dedication. Ariel makes rapid progress and can already read simple sentences. She casually inquires about books from Arendelle, her eyes full of nostalgia. Urian immediately mentions there is a shopping district outside the palace that sells Arendelle antiques. Upon hearing this, Ariel cannot sit still, her eyes sparkling. She pulls Urian along, saying they must go treasure hunting immediately. The maids are scared out of their wits and quickly send someone to notify Ansel. Ansel rushes over breathlessly to stop them, saying this is too risky. But when Ariel hears Cedric cannot accompany them, she becomes even happier. She coldly warns Ansel not to meddle, her tone brooking no refusal. She also says she will bring back a gift for Cedric, telling him to wait obediently. Having no choice, Ansel can only dispatch guards to protect them secretly. Watching Ariel's cheerful departure, he sighs with a headache. Ariel enters the antique shop with Urian and Rachel, immediately captivated by the room full of Arendelle-style items. The shop attendant enthusiastically approaches to inquire about their needs. She originally wants to find magic books, but suddenly changes her mind. Remembering Rosemary's criticism of her room's tacky furniture, she decides to look at furniture first. As she examines the reproduction furniture, a familiar voice sounds behind her. It turns out Rosemary has also arrived. Rosemary pretentiously disparages her taste, boasting about her aesthetic sense cultivated since childhood. Ariel shows no anger, but instead smiles and extends her hand toward her. Rosemary involuntarily places her hand in hers. Then she immediately withdraws it in embarrassment, her face flushing bright red. Ariel finds her even more adorable like this and cannot help but laugh. At this moment, she notices a shabby box in the corner. The shop attendant quickly apologizes, saying these defective items are to be discarded. She leans in for a closer look and discovers several familiar-looking accessories inside, worn but distinctive. Rosemary begins her sharp-tongued commentary again, saying her taste is so poor she would even appreciate items destined for destruction. However, Ariel secretly smiles to herself, because Rosemary is also exactly her type. Ignoring the mockery, she insists on purchasing an old hairpin. Then she has Urian cast magic on the hairpin. Under everyone's astonished gaze, the hairpin instantly restores to like-new condition, shining with brilliant luster. Rosemary is instantly rendered speechless and huffily turns to leave, but just as she leaves, A commotion erupts outside the shop, suggesting some disturbance. Ariel rushes out the door and sees someone attempting to kidnap Rosemary. Without hesitation, she stabs the kidnapper's thigh with the newly purchased hairpin. Taking advantage of the kidnapper's distraction from pain, she sends him flying with a punch. Ariel's strength astonishes everyone, and inspired by this, Rosemary bites hard into another kidnapper's arm and breaks free. Seeing the situation turn against them, the kidnappers immediately flee, but they are subdued around the corner by knights who arrive just in time. Cedric walks over slowly with his hands in his pockets, looking down contemptuously at the kidnappers pinned to the ground. He coldly states that he will properly punish these audacious rats. Ariel wants to chase after the fleeing accomplice, but the knights refuse to let her take the risk. Standing to the side, Rosemary cannot help but ask Ariel why she fights so well. Ariel turns back and explains that she grew up roughhousing with Brian. Rosemary immediately jumps to an excited conclusion. Convinced that Ariel must have beaten the Emperor into submission, Ariel quickly stops her, reminding her that she should say thank you. Rosemary's face instantly turns as red as a ripe apple, stammering without being able to get the words out. In the end, she is so embarrassed that she jumps straight into the carriage and flees without looking back. Watching her hasty retreat, Ariel cannot help but laugh. At this moment, Cedric approaches from behind her, carrying the kidnapper who tried to escape. He drops the man on the ground, saying this is her trophy. Looking at him, Ariel thinks he resembles a cat proudly presenting its catch. But his expression suddenly changes as he announces he will deal with these audacious criminals. Ariel quickly pleads for mercy, saying they might still be useful. She convinces him with just a few words, leaving the nearby knights stunned. Cedric then invites her to continue shopping. After they walk away, the Knight Commander orders his subordinates with a dark expression to dispose of the two criminals. Meanwhile, at the Saint's residence, her mother discusses the attack on Rosemary. Her tone carries regret that they failed to seize the opportunity to eliminate this rival. The Saint shows no emotion, merely inquiring about the witch rumors. Her mother smiles with satisfaction, saying everything has been arranged. She assures her daughter that she will clear away all obstacles. A few days later, Ariel attends Rosemary's tea party accompanied by Rachel. Rachel tells her that His Majesty will no longer allow her to leave the palace alone. Therefore, this tea party is arranged within the palace grounds. Arriving at the garden, Rosemary has already been sitting on the sofa waiting for quite some time. Even when she sees Ariel arrive, she does not rise to greet her. Ariel does not mind, elegantly taking a seat across from her and picking up her teacup. Rosemary carefully observes her every movement, then suddenly places her hands on her knees and falls into deep thought. She discovers with surprise that Ariel's etiquette is flawlessly perfect. Then she abruptly stands up and slams a paper on the table with impressive force. Ariel takes the paper but finds she cannot read the writing on it. Rachel quietly explains in her ear that this is a maid application form. Ariel freezes, completely unprepared for this turn of events. Rosemary excitedly announces that she wants to become her maid and help her become empress. She says that watching Ariel rescue her on the street that day was incredibly impressive. Combined with today's perfect etiquette, she feels completely confident. Ariel asks Rosemary in confusion whether she is not a candidate for empress herself. Rosemary gives a cold laugh, saying that was all a terrible idea her family came up with to suppress her. Rather than becoming empress, she would much rather inherit the duke title. She boldly gulps down a cup of tea, yet her face flushes with a drunken glow. Ariel watches dumbfounded, wondering how drinking tea could produce the effect of drinking alcohol. Rosemary begins complaining about her three brothers, growing more agitated as she speaks. Her eldest brother gambles all day, her second brother chases women everywhere, and her third brother drinks excessively. If the title falls into their hands, the family will surely be ruined. What frustrates her most is that His Majesty is also the youngest, so why can he become emperor? She grips Ariel's hand tightly, swearing she will definitely help her become empress. It turns out His Majesty promised her that as long as she takes good care of Ariel, he will support her inheriting the title. Having said this, Rosemary bounces away, declaring she will come to the palace tomorrow to serve as a maid. Ariel stands frozen in place, only now realizing that Cedric arranged all of this. On another front, the Knight Commander reports the investigation results of the kidnapping incident to Cedric. They discovered traces of an evil cult at the scene, along with papers bearing strange writing. Even more suspicious is that the witch rumors all originated from the palace servants' quarters. The next day, in a corner of the palace, several maids discover a paper covered in eerie writing. Rachel calmly collects the paper, instructing them to remember the time and location of the discovery. Alone in her room, she examines the paper with an unreadable expression on her face. In the dressing room, Rosemary excitedly has Ariel try on various gowns. Ariel collapses exhausted in a chair, feeling like she is about to fall apart. Cedric appears at just the right moment, and Ariel immediately clings to him as if seeing her savior. She begs him to take her away from here. Anywhere will do. Maids passing in the corridor whisper among themselves again, and Cedric's gaze turns cold. He softly suggests killing them all, and Ariel quickly stops him, but she quietly adds that if he really must kill them, just do not let her see it. Cedric looks at her with surprise, saying that others would desperately try to stop him. Only she would compromise compromise, allowing him to act where she cannot see. Ariel smiles bitterly, recalling her experiences on the battlefield and understanding that she has long since become numb. She softly says this magnificent palace makes her uncomfortable, as she is only staying temporarily after all. Once she has seen this beautiful world, she will eventually return to the forest. Hearing this, Cedric's expression instantly darkens. He gazes at Ariel, noticing once again that expression of being ready to leave at any moment. At this moment, the chatter of maids drifts from the adjacent room. They are excitedly discussing the witch rumors, their voices growing louder. Ariel is about to say something when she realizes Cedric has stopped in his tracks. He violently pushes open the door, appearing menacingly before the two maids. The maids are terrified out of their wits, falling to their knees and begging for mercy. With a cold expression, he orders them taken away for severe punishment to make an example of them. After dealing with the maids, he turns and asks her why she is not angry. She shrugs, saying she does not care about these rumors. His expression grows even darker, saying this is because she does not consider this place home at all. He grips her arm tightly, his voice carrying suppressed rage. He accuses her of always treating the palace as temporary lodging, ready to leave at any time. At this point, he suddenly shows a wounded expression, and his voice drops lower. He murmurs to himself whether she will abandon him because he is different from others. Watching his vulnerable appearance, Ariel feels a pang of sympathy. At this moment, Ansel hurries over, requesting a private word. Cedric frowns with displeasure, inquiring what has happened. Rosemary also approaches quickly, saying in a low voice that nobles have entered the palace believing the rumors. The group arrives at the audience chamber where nobles are engaged in heated discussion. Cedric takes his seat on the throne, coldly demanding they produce evidence. The saint gracefully steps forward, mentioning the revelation from the divine oracle. The nobles echo an agreement, remarking that the saint is truly the most suitable candidate for empress. Only now does Ariel realize that the woman she met that day was the saint. The saint demands a witch trial, claiming she has Ariel's confidant as a witness. This statement shocks Ariel, unable to imagine who would betray her. Even more surprising is that Cedric readily agrees to the trial. This decision stuns both the saint and the nobles, and the entire chamber erupts in chaos. Back in the room, Rosemary angrily complains about the saint's hypocrisy. She paces back and forth in agitation, unable to understand why Cedric agreed to the trial. Ariel, however, leisurely sips her tea, showing no trace of worry on her face. When Rosemary asks why she is not worried, she says she trusts Cedric. The only thing that concerns her is the identity of the witness claiming to be her confidant. Meanwhile, Rachel walks through the corridor toward a hidden room. She gently pushes open the door, asking what she needs to do next. Soon, news of the witch trial spreads like wildfire, and the entire imperial city erupts in chaos. Magic users whisper among themselves, all finding this sudden trial incredible. Urian's face is filled with worry and confusion as he hurries to the courtroom. Commoners crowd around the courtroom perimeter, standing on tiptoe trying to see what is happening inside. The saint's mother, Marchioness Kate, sits in her seat with furrowed brows. She feels deeply confused about the emperor's ready acceptance of the trial. She recalls the process of Cedric ascending to the throne, finding him even more inscrutable. Worried that their plan has already been seen through, cold sweat breaks out on her forehead. The saint softly reassures her mother to trust in their thorough preparations, yet her gaze remains locked on Ariel across from her. The saint silently resolves that she must eliminate this woman who stands in her way. Rosemary leans close to Ariel, quietly discussing the recent strange rumors. At this moment, Cedric enters the courtroom, and the entire venue instantly falls silent. He takes his seat in the presiding position, his gaze sweeping across the room with undeniable authority. The saint stands on the magic circle in the center of the courtroom and begins her accusations. Ariel curiously examines the glowing magic circle, appearing thoughtful. When the saint mentions the evil cult, Cedric signals the knight commander to step forward and report. Rosemary cannot help but roll her eyes, quietly complaining about the saint's hypocrisy. She describes the details of the cult rituals in detail, causing Ariel's expression to change abruptly. These details remind Ariel of the Keswin cult from 1,000 years ago, setting off alarm bells in her mind. Rosemary gently touches her hand, reminding her to stay calm. Ariel takes a deep breath and quickly recovers her composed expression. At this point, the saint shifts her argument, connecting the evil cult and witch legends to Ariel. She claims to have witnesses and evidence that can prove Ariel is the mastermind behind it all. At this moment, the magic circle beneath the saint's feet glows brightly, and Ariel quickly asks about its function. Rosemary patiently explains that this is a truth-detecting magic circle. If someone tells the truth, the magic circle will glow, but if they lie, they will suffer tremendous tremendous pain throughout their body. At this moment, an ordinary maid walks trembling onto the magic circle, preparing to testify. Rosemary stands up in anger but is gently held back by Ariel. The maid shakily accuses Ariel, producing a book as evidence. The courtroom immediately erupts in uproar, with everyone believing the rumor about the witch being illiterate was a conspiracy. Ariel calmly denies having borrowed this book. The saint immediately counters, claiming there is a clear record in the borrowing records. The maid suddenly becomes agitated and produces a paper with strange writing on it. She states she personally witnessed the witch burning this paper. The magic circle immediately glows, proving the maid is not lying. Everyone is stunned by this development and begins to believe the maid's testimony. The knight commander presents the paper to Cedric, who glances toward the saint's mother. So far, she is the only one who could orchestrate all of this. The judge takes the evidence and asks Ariel whether she wishes to defend herself. Ariel rises gracefully, requesting to examine the evidence personally. After carefully examining the paper, a meaningful smile appears at the corner of her mouth. She states with certainty that this is a forgery.